Welcome, everyone, to our first CFE support webinar, Managing Exam Stress. My name is Debbie Bailiff. Before I begin, I want to extend a big thank you to the great partnership between CPA Western School of Business, CPA Ontario, and CPA Atlantic School of Business. They've ensured that the appropriate resources and time was put aside to make sure that this valuable information is available to you as you prepare to write CFE in June. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to your province or region, and I've included their appropriate email addresses here. Probably at this point, you're already feeling a little bit of an apprehension as you're starting to prepare to write CFE. Based on the feedback that we've received from several candidates in the past, we felt it was very important to talk about stress management as soon as possible. And I know that candidates do experience a certain level of anxiety when they write their first day 1, day 2, and day 3 case. Don't worry, that is normal. As a result, today I'm going to go through and talk about the different sources of exam stress, provide you with some anxiety reducing strategies, in particular the day of the exams, and provide you with some additional resources. I love this quote. The CFE is a marathon, not a sprint. And when you're preparing and running a marathon, you need to remain focused and sustain that stamina. And the same principle applies when it comes to writing CFE. As a result, it's very important to make sure that you practice self-care and stress management. Managing stress is one of the key success factors to passing CFE. I want to provide you with an example that I experienced as an exam supervisor several years ago. One of the candidates during day 2 exam asked if she could talk to me. We went out into the hallway and she told me, she said, I'm exhausted. I've had very little sleep the last few weeks. She said, I can't focus. I'm not even sure what they're asking me, let alone prepare a response. I convinced her to go back and finish writing day 2. Unfortunately, she didn't pass that year. However, the next year, when she walked into that exam room, the first thing she said to me is, Debbie, I made sure I took care of myself. I was well rested. I'm well prepared, and I'm confident. The great news is she passed the second time she wrote. So it's critical that you're able to put your best foot forward. And that means going in to write an exam, 3 days of exams exhausted, is not the appropriate strategy. So let's talk about the various sources of exam stress. And there's many of them. I'm going to go through each of them individually. Procrastination regrets, imbalance between work and studies, not prioritizing the course material, lacking a proper workspace, not enough sleep, unhealthy eating, and not taking enough breaks. So let's look at each of these individually. So inaction can cause stress. And what happens is many candidates feel that there's just an unsurmountable amount of work to do. So as a result, they do very little. The key is to create your study plan early. Make sure that you break things down, activities into smaller, manageable pieces, and assign realistic times. Now, I want to emphasize realistic times. You can't put just an hour to review the Tax Act. Make sure that you're allocating time to not only write the practice cases, but to debrief them, document your key learnings, to practice, re-practice writing those responses that you were challenged with when it came to the assessment opportunities, and allocate time to study. Make sure too that you're fully aware of what your work and personal commitments are. So that's also included in your study plan. So the imbalance between work and studies. So working and studying at the same time can be exhausting. I want to change that word can. It is exhausting. And for many of you, you've just completed capstone 1 and you're already tired. So it's important to have an effective strategy in place. I strongly recommend that you sit down with your manager. You talk about what are the commitments, what do you need to do from a study perspective between now and when you write CFE in June. What are your work obligations? Come up with a strategy together so that you can ensure that you have the time you need to adequately and properly prepare to write CFE. Some of the tips to help balance the load, think about and determine what are the number of hours that you have available to study. Not only the hours, the days, the time of day. Would you be able to do more effectively early in the morning when a lot of the people from the household aren't up? Can you use time over your lunch to review some technical skills? Early evening, or should it be after everyone goes to bed? Define the major priorities. Are there times that work is not as busy? Can you be using some of that time to prepare to write CFE? And are there other times where work needs to be priority? Again, adapt and make sure that your study plan has that all in place. Make sure that you've kept all the relevant parties well informed. So we've talked about your manager. What about make sure that you've informed your family and friends? Make sure that they're aware of what your plans are between now and when you write CFE so they can support you. Recognize the need for well-being, your personal, physical, and mental well-being. Be on the lookout for signs of burnout. Are you becoming more irritable? Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you having trouble focusing and concentrating? These are all symptoms of anxiety, of burnout. A really bad symptom is having anxiety panic attacks. So if you're experiencing some of these, take a moment and reflect. And think very carefully about the need to take some time off, whether it's you need to take an evening off, a day, or a few days, because you need to again refresh. And I know it seems counterintuitive, but if you're able to again, reduce that level of stress so that you can efficiently and effectively study, prepare your responses, then you can get things done much easier. The lack of a proper workspace. Now, many of us can work in different environments. Maybe how I can work and what I need set up is different than what's going to work well for you. Know what works best for you. Some people find that they can work in a coffee shop as long as there's not a lot of distractions. Other people need to be in places where it's completely quiet, that they have all of their books spread out. I know some of the candidates that I've worked one-on-one with, they've gone to the local library or they've gone to the local university library where it's very quiet. Make sure that wherever you're going, that you have the proper lighting, that you have good back support. Do you have the option of being able to set up a permanent location where you have everything at easy access? Not having enough sleep. Some of us have this nasty habit of burning the candle at both ends. In other words, that means getting up very early in the morning and going to bed very late at night. And I know I've kind of, said at times in the past, "Oh, I don't need an awful lot of sleep and I can function very well." Well, perhaps you can too in the short term, but not in the long term. And you certainly don't want that exhaustion to start creeping in right before you write CFE or while you're writing CFE. You want to make sure that you're at peak performance. Because according to the study by Harvard Medical School Health Sleep Division, sleep optimizes focus, consolidation of memory, and our ability to recall information. These are all the functions we need to rely on when we're writing CFE. So here's some really good advice, 4 ways of how to get a good night's sleep. Try and go to sleep and get up at the same time every day. Think about you're going to be writing CFE at 9 o'clock in the morning. What time are you going to need to get up those days to get up, to have a good breakfast, to drive to wherever CFE is held, and to make sure that your brain is functioning, it's at optimal function? That's the time that you should be getting up every day. Then work backwards to make sure that you have scheduled 8 hours of good sleep. Now, when I say get up and go to bed at the same time every day, the advice that includes weekends because you want to get that internal clock working. You want to make sure that when you write CFE, when you start writing at 9 o'clock, your mind is at its optimal function. Sometimes you might stay up later on the weekends, still get up the same time in the morning, do your same activities and so on. If you need to have a nap in the afternoon, do that. But we want that internal clock working extremely well when you write CP. Keep those electronic devices out of your bedroom. They really keep us awake. Make sure that you wind down before you go to bed. And I've had a nasty habit, many years ago of doing that. I would work right up until the last minute and then go to bed. What would happen is my mind was still processing what I had been doing before. I couldn't get to sleep. And then all of a sudden, I'm now getting stressed because I can't get to sleep. I know that I have to get up. And before I know it, I've been laying there for a few hours. So again, an hour before you go to sleep, turn off all those electronic devices. Do something that's going to kind of relax yourself, whether that's listening to music or reading a book. Unhealthy eating. So if you've been consuming nothing but coffee, energy drinks, and junk food, you're likely contributing to your stress level. Healthy eating, it has a positive impact on our focus and memory when we're studying. So it's worth taking and investing time to create those meals that you can freeze or use the food services that are available to have healthy meals that are prepared. You could put them in the freezer and then just haul them out when you need them. So instead of, ordering takeout. Now, I know some of the advice I'm providing to you is easier said than done. But remember, we are trying to help and provide advice that's going to increase your chances of you being able to function at your optimal performance when you're writing CV. One of the things too we find is sometimes we don't take enough breaks. So if you find that you tend to be an individual who you would read material nonstop for hours, you need to take a break. Our eyes need a break. So change your surroundings for a while, whether that's to go outside for a moment, a walk, a run, whether it's listen to a movie, listen to a podcast, do something else to again refresh yourself so that you can go back energized. And again, you're going to be able to more efficiently and effectively absorb that information. So, here are some other very important anxiety reducing strategies. One of the most important ones is make sure you're prepared. It's important to be well prepared. And what do you need to do in order to be well prepared? Make sure that you're practicing those cases in exam-like conditions so you can simulate that CFE experience. So for day 2, sit down and write a day 2 case in the 5 hours. Don't write it over 2 days. If a day 3 case is 75 minutes, write your response in 75 minutes. For day 1 case, again, write the day 1 case in the 4 hours. As you're writing or as you're, just about to write your response, a lot of the times we have that little voice in our head and it's telling us we can't do it. We don't know what we're doing. It's important to banish those negative thoughts. And how you do that is start repeating in your head, you can do it. You know what you're doing. You can do it. Because one of the uh, fundamental principles is what we tell ourselves becomes reality. So if you tell yourself you can't do it, congratulations, you can't. If you start telling yourself you can do it, it starts to reduce your stress level. It starts to clear your mind. And then all of a sudden, the approach becomes more obvious or the answer becomes more obvious. Take deep breaths. So when maybe you're going to write a response for something that you don't have as much confidence, take a deep breath. That starts to settle our nerves. When you're writing, so when it comes to day 3, you could be writing 3 or 4 cases. Take a deep breath as you prepare your outline. After you prepared your outline, then you write a response. Take a deep breath when you're finished that one. And it's almost like close the door on that case and work on the next one. Avoid that perfectionism trap. Many of you, due to the nature of the industry, quality is so important to you. And many candidates feel that they need a perfect answer. I want to be very clear. In order to pass CFE, your answer does not need to be perfect. I want to repeat that again. Your answer does not need to be perfect. The CFE markers are looking for, you know what, a reasonable response. As you go through and write day 1, day 2, and day 3, you will get a better sense of what is a reasonable response. You'll get a sense of what is when enough is enough. You need to move on because one of the fundamental principles is you need to complete all of the requireds to the best of your ability within the time frame that you're given. If you have a perfect answer for one assessment opportunity or one ask, I use assessment opportunities required and ask. They all mean the same thing, but you do not address another, that could result in you failing. I will be giving you much more information on how CFE is marked. So make sure that you watch CFE, Understanding CFE and how it's marked, because I'll give you more insights there. Make sure that you determine when and where you're going to be writing. So if you've never gone to that particular area that you're writing, do a trial run, figure out how long it takes you to get there. If you're driving, where's parking, and so on. Familiarize yourself. So that's not something that you're worried about the first day of exams. A big thing is when you're preparing is prioritize your course material. So the competency map, that's your syllabus. The great news is it's already been prioritized. And how have they done that? Because they've assigned proficiency levels. And so let's just clearly make sure that everyone understands proficiency level A means that that particular item, task, you need to know extremely well. Then B, then C. One of the things, almost, I think it's human nature, we tend to focus when we're studying on the areas that we already are doing well and the areas that we love. And we tend to avoid where we struggle. So unfortunately, time is a limited resource. So you need to focus your energies on identifying your knowledge gaps, the areas that you don't do well. So let me give you an idea about kind of what are the requirements. We're going to use the accounting and assurance standard. So what's testable? Okay, so any of the items that are identified in the competency map, they're testable. And then the proficiency level dictates the degree of knowledge that you need to have behind those. And the higher the chances are that that could appear on CFE. So when it comes to the assurance handbook, your proficiency levels are B and A, mostly at the B when it comes at the core level. And again, I will go through this more when it comes to understanding CFE, but for day one, you're tested at the core level. And for day three, you're tested at the core level. And for day two, for what we call common assessment opportunities. So assessment opportunities, everyone is expected to address are also at the core level. When it comes to IFRS and ASPE, there's a mix of proficiency level B and A, but most of them are at level A. So if it is a financial reporting issue at level A, that means that you need to know that particular issue very, very well. For not-for-profit, it's either level B or A. For concepts that are unique to government accounting, it's only level C. And then for standards that have taken place but not in effect yet, it would be level C. Or if you're writing on day two, your specialty is audit and assurance, it would be level B and elective. So you do have a PDF of the CPA competency map. There's also a great Excel spreadsheet tool that I find really, really helpful. And the reason being is because you can sort that information. You can filter it by the competency area, by module, and you can filter by proficiency level. This can be accessed, so the competency map can be accessed. All of you have access to Introduction to CFE and Capstone 2. And under the module resources, if you hit the competency map and then go to below the PDF, and when you see Excel tool, you can download that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a demonstration. And I'm going to show you how to sort that information. The demonstration I'm going to show you is how to sort for financial reporting. And I'm also going to show you how to sort for performance management. So bear with me for a moment. Plus, I've included instructions here. So the great news is with a recording, you can stop the recording, pull up the Excel spreadsheet, follow the instructions. But let's go through this together at the moment. So let's bring up financial reporting. So this is what your Excel spreadsheet is going to look like. So we want to create, I'm going to end up creating one particular file for financial reporting. I'd end up recommending doing this for each of the competency levels because you'll be tested in all of them. But let's start with financial reporting. I recommend doing management accounting next. The reason I recommend starting with financial reporting, management accounting, and your role is because the bulk of your assessment opportunities will be in those particular areas. The reason why I say both financial reporting and management accounting is I find many candidates, they either enjoy or good at one of them, but not necessarily at for both of them. And when it comes to the different levels, there's 4 levels in order to pass CFE. I find that candidates, they kind of avoid, whether they try to avoid financial reporting or they try to avoid management accounting. And that might not negatively impact their ability to pass level 2, where there's a requirement that you only pass either financial reporting or management accounting, but it could have a significant negative impact on your ability to pass level 1. Now, you're probably thinking at this stage, I'm not exactly sure what Debbie's talking about. Don't worry. Please make sure that you watch the recording for understanding CFE and how it's marked. I go into great detail on each of these levels. Also, too, I find another competency that candidates tend to avoid is tax. Please make sure that you understand what you need to know when it comes to from a tax perspective, because you need to meet minimum requirements for all of the technical competencies. Okay, so just a little bit more insight and hopefully a little bit of an incentive for you to make sure that you watch understanding CFE and how it's marked. So now let's look at this Excel spreadsheet. Well, first of all, let's get rid of what we don't want. So make sure that I'm going to delete these rows. Make sure that you bring your cursor and delete the row underneath taxation. So I'm going to delete that. Okay, I'm going to expand the financial reporting. So let's move over here. There's some information I'm not going to need. So I don't want any of this information about entry. I'm just going to delete it. I'm going to keep the information when it comes to for core 1 and core 2. And let's just go and do the data and we'll filter that. Okay. I'm going to get rid of the outcomes because all I really want to know is there's a section called the knowledge list, and this details exactly what tasks I need to be able to do. So I'm going to get rid of that. The outcomes. We're not going to look at the electives at this point. We just want to know what do we need to know when we're tested at the core level for financial reporting. Oh, so let's get rid of those rows. Okay, here's the knowledge piece. Now what I'm going to do is financial reporting is covered in core 1. So I'm going to just get rid of the row for core 2. I'll delete that. And look, now I have the ability to sort. So now what I'll do is I'll just sort proficiency level A. And now it gives me all of the items that I need to be able to do and do extremely well. So again, here is all this information. And I want to highlight here, this talks about, so evaluates the treatment. These are all the financial reporting issues that I need to know extremely well and be able to discuss and deal with either moderate, low to moderate complexity. So now let's look at, say that on day 2, you are going to specialize in performance management. So let's look at that. One of the things is there's a very close link to management accounting and performance management. The competency is strategy and governance. So I want to keep both strategy and governance and management and accounting. If you are specializing in audit and assurance, I would make sure that I keep financial reporting and audit and assurance. Because what happens is the requirements when it comes to day two, the proficiency level could be higher. So in this instance, I want to get rid of financial reporting. I want to keep strategy and governance, and I want to get rid of the rest of them. So let's get rid of that. We know we're going to expand those. Let's keep going down. Expand the others. There we go. Then what we want to do is we're going to get rid of entry level. We don't need that. Let's get rid of that. We actually don't need to. We want to know what do we need and what's the proficiency levels when we're being tested on day two in our role specific. So let's get rid of core. Delete that. What we're going to do here is the first thing that you need to do is do the filter first. Okay, so we're going to filter that then. So you must filter first. Then we're going to get rid of the other roles that we don't need. We don't need the outcomes either. Here are the knowledge pieces. And now again, we can sort by proficiency level. And the good news is with Excel, then what you can do is add another row in here and put in where your areas of focus are. So again, I'm hoping that you will find this advantageous. Now let's Okay, so the instructions, as I said, are here. So the benefit is you could stop the recording and practice and sort your Excel spreadsheet. So another thing I want to highlight is under so this is available, everyone has access to Introduction to Capstone 2 and CFE module for 2025. So under resources, you can download flashcards. There are printing instructions and it's a zip file, and this will also help you prepare for CFE. So what it has is it has a lot of the criteria for a lot of the financial reporting issues. So this can really be very helpful. I wanted to share with you some very valuable insights from the Board of Examiners, and these are comments from their report for May of 2024. And they noted that there's a trend of declining technical abilities. The pattern that they are seeing over the past few CFEs has continued, with candidates generally avoiding the more complex topics. So again, this is emphasizing the importance of downloading, sorting, knowing what the proficiency levels are, making sure that you're very comfortable with proficiency level A, then move on to B, and then move on to C. One of the things I've also found is candidates that are enrolled in Capstone 2. I've had some candidates say, well, as long as I'm comfortable, I felt that as long as I'm comfortable and I could do all of the assessment opportunities that I was tested on in Capstone 2, I should be able to pass CFE. That's not the case. Again, the competency map is your syllabus. Just because they tested something in the past doesn't always mean that they're going to test the same thing again. So make sure that you're sorting that competency map. The Board of Examiners, they're encouraging candidates to be balanced in study and to ensure that you have a sufficient level of technical knowledge in all competency areas. So reinforcing that avoiding a competency error will most likely result in you failing CFE. When it comes to day two, the Board of Examiners are finding that there appears to be more candidates who do not seem comfortable comfortable with her chosen role. Very, very important. The expectations are different when it comes to your role, those AOs, which stand for assessment opportunities. They are being tested at the elective proficiency level. That is got a higher expectation. One of the things I would certainly like to encourage you is to make sure that you've chosen the right role. If you've chosen a role and now you're reflecting and thinking it might not be the best role for me, then you can make that change. Reach out to your province or your region as soon as possible. Statistic wise, some things that we have found is if candidates marginally passed an elective, and that's the area you're going to specialize when it comes to day two, without significant effort on your part, statistic wise, it's very difficult to pass. We have also found too that if candidates have marginally passed, if they've been in the professional education program and they've marginally passed financial reporting or marginally passed management accounting, that again, statistic wise, it's very, very difficult to pass CFE. So what does that mean? If you struggled in financial reporting and or management accounting, make sure you go back. A lot of energy needs to be paid against those areas. When it comes to your role, make sure you're choosing a role that you have work experience in and that you're technically sound. So the Board of Examiners strongly encourage candidates to select their day two role carefully and to consider your ability to respond to that competency area at the elective proficiency level. Some other things is to make sure that you're very familiar. So how to well prepare, make sure that you're very familiar with the two key resources. So NOSHA, your CPA handbook, and the income tax collection. Make sure some of the candidates you're challenging the exam. You've got to make sure that you're very comfortable using the handbook, that you can find the information that you need quickly. Also, a comment from the Board of Examiners was one area where there was lack of technical knowledge that was evident was on assessment opportunities where you required the handbook or the income tax knowledge. So again, practice. Make sure that you can find information quickly. For those of you who are challenging the exam, make sure if you've never used Surpass, make sure that you're watching. There's some videos on some of the uh, differences when it comes to Word and Excel, because it's really not Word and Excel. There are the tips and tricks document is wonderful. And these can all be found under CFE resources in Capstone 2 and the resources under Introduction to Capstone 2. Plus, I've included the link for CPA Canada. Some of the things I want to highlight when it comes to Surpass the tips and tricks. First of all, one of the things that we highly recommend you do is practice writing the case in one session and in the time allocated. And when you're writing the case, use your laptop, just the laptop screen, the laptop keyboard, because that's the only system you're going to have available to you when you write your exam. Make sure that you're using, I hate to say it, but make sure that you're using a paper copy of the case because that's what you're going to have available. When it comes to Excel, only use one tab because you only have one tab available in Excel. Some of the important tips is do not copy and paste large bits of information from the handbook. Okay? The system, it will most likely what happens is it will kick you out of the system. And simply copying and pasting Everything from the handbook will not result even in a reaching competent response, let alone a competent response. Okay. Yes, can you copy information? Certainly you can. Small bits, make sure it's the information specifically that you need. For those proficiency level A's when it comes to financial reporting, you should be comfortable enough and know what the criteria is and paraphrase it in your own words. You always have the handbook that you can go back in case you forget something. You want to use the handbook for that maybe, financial reporting issue that you're not as familiar with. The great news is Surpass saves every 30 seconds, but it's also bad news. So don't cut and paste, because if you cut and paste and something happens and you're kicked out, then that information is gone. Now, I want to be very clear. I've been an exam supervisor for a very long time. If something happens and you're kicked out, do not worry. We can get you back in very, very quickly. Okay. One of the other things is using Alt Tab, and so many of us do that now, but because you're using within Surpass and you're using what I always kind of nicely refer to as fake Word, fake Excel, Alt Tab doesn't work. So make sure that you're not using Alt Tab. And when you're formatting, and these are in your tips and tricks within Excel, just make sure that you're not kind of highlighting all of the rows and the columns, because the system just can't handle it. But again, I'm not telling you this to increase your stress. I'm doing it for the opposite, because I can confidently tell you, if you understand what you can and cannot do, and you're comfortable with that, there are normally no problems at all. And the recent CFE, as an exam supervisor, I only had once that one person got kicked out, once in the entire 3 days. Here's something that's provided to you. Take advantage of it. So, your information, if there's any financial information and it takes more than 10 lines, it's going to be provided in Excel. So, as I said, you have one workable tab, and you're going to have other tabs, and that information, you can't do any calculations, but you can copy and paste it into your workable tab. So take advantage of that. It saves time. And I show you here, so for day one, you will have your one sheet. That's your workable tab. And then you'll have an English and French tab. Okay, so if any of the financial information is over 10 lines, it'll be there. In day two, you're going to have a common section. So those are for the common assessment opportunities for both English and French. And then you're going to have it for each of the roles: audit and assurance, finance, uh, performance management, and tax, both in English and French. And day three, you'll have a tab for each of the cases, both English and French. So one of the things that the Board of Examiner has found is, and I want to read this to you. So data analysis is an important part of the CPA competency map, and the financial information is being pre-populated in order to allow candidates to perform data analysis in a more complex and effective manner. And what they're finding is candidates aren't taking advantage of this. And sometimes there's information that you need to do. For example, there's been a few different assessment opportunities where in audit assurance, they needed to perform data analysis to identify the anomalies, and that wasn't done. So be on the lookout for that information, use it to your advantage, and know that there could be something there that is needed as part of your assessment opportunity. When it comes to the day of the exam, here are some really good stress management tips. Make sure that you rest a few days before the exam. Don't keep cramming, right up until right before you go to bed the night before you start to write CFE. Do something fun. Engage in activities that are going to help manage that stress. The day of the exam, you're told, whether you need to be there an hour and a half, 2 hours before. It all varies depending on the city, the location. Arrive early because you never know from a traffic perspective, from a parking perspective. Make sure that you schedule to arrive early so that you can sign in, you know where you're sitting, and then in lots of instances you're able to kind of leave the room for a while and then you can come back at a certain time. When you start to feel that anxiety and feel overwhelmed, again, take those slow and deep breaths. Don't kind of focus on what's outside of your control, what kind of assessment opportunity is going to be given, how it's going to be marked. Focus on what you need to do. When you're writing day 3, you need to reset between each of those cases. You have to let it go. So make sure, again, taking that deep breath. Once you finish the response for the first one, you're done. Close that chapter, mentally close that chapter, close that book, and move on to the next case. Stick to the recommended time that you've allocated that for each case. Don't steal time, because if you keep stealing time, what happens is the last case, now all of a sudden you're not able to complete all of the assessment opportunities. And that again is significantly impeding your ability to pass. You also need to reset at the end of each day. So don't, plan something fun. Once you've written, go out, go for a walk, listen to music, do something, go out for a nice meal. Don't spend, time sitting around with your peers talking about, well, what did you do? What did you think? Because all that's going to do is it's going to confuse you. It's going to increase stress. You need to decompress. I want to emphasize the restricted items because I see this lots of times, because again, you don't want to bring these in, you don't want to have this pointed out and then not be able to use something. So no, yeah, make sure that you don't bring any pens. Your pencils, they can't be the mechanical pencils. They have to be the old-fashioned pencils. No pencil sharpener. The water bottle, your water bottle, you need to be able to see through it. No mouse pad. Make sure that you bring something that you can put on if it gets colder, but make sure it's not a hoodie. No hoodies are allowed. I've also included here some additional resources that are very helpful when it comes to your mental well-being. So again, here's some information that you might want to look at. Now, as I said at the beginning, this is the first of our CP support webinar series. So stress management, the recording is available. Understanding the CFE, the recording will be available. And these recordings can be found whether it's on the home page in D2L under Capstone 2, or it can also be found under Introduction to CFE and Capstone 2, the home page. We are going to have some live recordings, and the recordings will be available again, but the live recordings, you will have the ability to ask questions. So day 2 and Path to Competent, that's going to be on March 30th, and it's going to be at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So please make sure that you convert that into your local time. Day 3 and Time Management, that is on March 31st, again at 4 p.m. Pacific time. Day 1, the Carnet Bread, I'm going to be doing that on April the 4th. April the 8th. And day 1, Viviana, for those who of you are writing version 2 of Viviana, that is going to be on April the 9th. So again, each of those recordings are going to be live, and there's going to be an opportunity for you to ask questions. Make sure that you register for them, because these webinars are designed to help increase your chances of passing CFE, and they're based on the feedback from the Board of Examiners, and I highlight the common challenges that candidates face. So I wish you the best of luck as you start to prepare to write CFE, and I hope to see you in upcoming webinars. Talk soon.